Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I am finally going to review Becoming the Boogeyman by Richard Chizmar. This was on my most anticipated reads of 2023 list, so last year. And it literally took me this long to get to it, and I'm really not 100% sure why. I really didn't want to order it off Amazon. So I kind of kept putting it off until it showed up at the Strand, and it just never did. So I ended up eventually ordering it online, and it came, and I read it, I think, in 4 days. I didn't want to put this book down. I have a lot of thoughts on it, but before I do that, I want to talk about the first book in the series. So the original book is called Chasing the Boogeyman. It came out in 2021. I actually began reading it in the Stanley Hotel, which was super awesome and super creepy, and I devoured it. I literally could not put that book down. I remember I read 200 pages, the last 200 pages, in one sitting until 2:30 in the morning. I needed to know what happened. What I loved so much about this book, and this is 100% my fault, but I'm so happy because in the afterword of this book, it says other people did this too. I didn't realize Chasing the Boogeyman was a work of fiction when I first read it, especially because Richard Chizmar is obviously a real person. Edgewood, Maryland is a real place, and a lot of the things that he talks about in the book are very biographical to him, and they are rooted in reality. So I really thought that with the crime scene photos and all of the forensics, and obviously it being kind of a small town murder in the 80s, I really thought that Chasing the Boogeyman was real. And then it wasn't until I got to the very, very end and I actually Googled it and then read the author's note that I was like, I am a moron and it is completely fabricated. But it was done so well, and the way that Richard Chizmar was able to put himself into that story was so compelling and so believable that I really fell for it. And I was completely blindsided by the twist and everything, and I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. So I was very excited for this second one. However, I was really concerned about how Richard Chizmar was going to follow up Chasing the Boogeyman, especially the fact that he was able to kind of trick a lot of his readers, even people who, realized it was fiction, into kind of believing that it was a real crime and a real case and a real serial killer. I was really interested to see how he was going to follow it up, because that's something that doesn't really happen in reality, where the serial killer kind of has this second wind 37 years down the road, because this book is set in 2022. The first one was primarily set in 1988. So I was really, really interested to see how that was going to work out. And honestly, a lot of my hesitations with this book come from that, and a lot of my kind of nitpicky critiques of this book also come from that, where the mystery is kind of gone, knowing that this is a fiction book, knowing that it is trying to follow in the footsteps of Chasing the Boogeyman, and knowing that in reality something like this probably wouldn't actually happen. I'm going to read the inside flap of this book. There will be spoilers to the big reveal in Chasing the Boogeyman, so if you don't want to know about that, maybe skip this part. But it's really hard to talk about this book without revealing who the killer is, because they are so integral to book 2. So just be aware of that. So, it says, back in the summer of 1988, a young Richard Chizmar was catapulted into the center of a living nightmare as the serial killer Joshua Gallagher, dubbed by the media as the Boogeyman, stalked his tranquil Maryland town. A lot has changed in the intervening years. These days, Chizmar enjoys a certain level of celebrity and notoriety himself, being the only person who an incarcerated Josh Gallagher will speak to on or off the record. Chizmar likes to believe that he's doing the world a public service by visiting Gallagher in prison, as there are plenty of other nameless victims out there who Gallagher might finally admit to killing and bring close to grieving loved ones, and a dark rhythm and routine begin to take hold. But Chizmar eventually finds there's a price to be paid for dancing with the devil, and when a masked figure with all the hallmarks of Gallagher's reign of terror from 30 years ago now leaves a horrifying calling card in front of Chizmar's home, and it's clear there's a new player on the board in the ongoing game that the Boogeyman controls. A riveting, haunting sequel to the New York Times bestselling thriller Chasing the Boogeyman, this is a tale of obsession and the adulation of evil, exploring modern society's true crime infatuation with unflinching honesty, sparing no one from the glare of the spotlight. Will those involved walk away from the story of a lifetime in order to keep their loved ones safe, or will they once again be drawn into a killer's web? As the story draws to its shattering conclusion, one person holds all the answers, and he just may be the most terrifying monster of them all. So again, this is done sort of in a weird style where you get a lot of narrative, but then you also kind of get police transcripts and interviews and recordings and news articles, and I loved it. And it's formatted with all of these kind of like photos to make you think that this is like a real true crime book, and it feels like a real true crime book. Unfortunately, like I said, knowing that this is fiction and knowing that something like this probably wouldn't happen is like the one thing that really dragged this book down for me, because that kind of illusion of it potentially being real was gone. I will say that it looks like this is also going to be the beginning of a series, and I'm kind of here for it. I know I'm never going to get the magic that I got from the first book of being completely blindsided, but kind of accepting that and knowing that, and then being able to kind of lean into the like ridiculous nature of this crime kind of continuing to focus around the same central civilian is kind of fun, and I'm here for it. I will say I didn't love this one as much as Chasing the Boogeyman as well, because in the original Chasing the Boogeyman, I felt really blindsided by the reveal of the killer, and it felt very realistic, very close to home, very hidden in plain sight. This one, I had my suspicions of who the killer was, and while I was wrong, I like to think I was pretty close. I was like really in that vein of like when it was revealed, I was like, okay, I was on the right trail. I will say I'm not actually going to say who I thought it was, but I was pretty close in my mind. So I was very happy that I didn't guess it, because that would have been a huge letdown, but I also definitely was a lot closer to it than I was with the first one. So definitely didn't kind of like pull the wool over our eyes with the reveal on this one. I also didn't love the ending as much. I felt like a lot of it kind of came up really, really quickly towards the end, and I would have liked to see more like kind of a forensics unraveling. I felt like there was a little bit of like a pop-out scene, like trying to scare you at the very last couple of pages that didn't quite work for me and didn't quite make sense in the context of the book, and I didn't love that. And I do kind of feel like Chizmar in this one isn't quite as likable of a character. I feel like in the first one, we are reading, I think he's like a 23-year-old boy trying to become this fledgling writer. In this, he's now his full adult self, and he talks a lot about like his collaborations with Stephen King and his success with Cemetery Dance, because he does own Cemetery Dance publications, and a lot of like his more successful books like Gwendy's Button Box, and like books that we have heard of, and these are all things that have actually happened. But it just kind of felt out of place having him kind of talk that way. I definitely liked him more as like the more like humble early 20-something kid than I do as like the adult man. And at moments I just kind of felt like he really was just really getting into just kind of talking about like his life. And a large part of the story is him kind of making this like semi-autobiographical tale about like what would his life be like if he was aligned in this like kind of serial killer mess. And it's cool, and I like that. And it's not something I want to knock about the book, but it's just something that I think worked better for his younger self than it did as his adult self. He also makes a lot of just really stupid decisions. Like, this man should just not be allowed to talk on camera. Just anytime he's involved with like the press or these podcast interviews, like he's just constantly making a fool of himself, and it's almost like a running joke in the book, but it's like after the first or second time, maybe don't do that. I also had a hard time believing how much the cops trusted to him. So there was that. That being said, though, I'm from Maryland. I can perfectly see all of the settings in this book, which is one of the things that I loved about the first one and I really love about the second one as well. A lot of his like very like local Maryland references were just, I love them. He even references Rehoboth Beach at one point, which is like literally where I got married, and I was like, yes! Like, it was so cool. So I really love the setting of this town. I really love the setting of the story. I really like the kind of idea of like small town Maryland being its own character, and that's been a like recurring thing in a lot of books that I've read recently, where like small town Maryland is kind of becoming like the new Maine, I feel like, and I'm here for it because I can totally see all of that. That being said, I really liked a lot of the pacing of this book. I thought it was very well done. I was very captivated. I really liked how he gave so much backstory to the victims, so much so that like I really started to feel like they were real people. Obviously they're not, but he did a really good job of just humanizing the victims. Even though they're fictional, it felt like more so than sometimes we get with actual like real true crime cases in all of the media that we consume today. And I really, really loved how he did that. Another thing I loved was the entire plot line with Henry Metheny. I'm actually not sure how to say it. I thought that was really, really cool. Completely unrealistic. Like the chances of that actually happening to somebody in real life are like pretty much next to zero. So that definitely made it a little bit harder for me to, again, suspend my disbelief. But again, just accepting that this is fiction and I'm not going to be blindsided the way that I was with the first one, I was super down for that story. That story also felt like something that actually happens to people who have survived and been escaped victims of serial killers and not even known it. And the fact that Chizmar actually brought that up, I thought was really, really cool. I'm not sure how I love how it all connects in the end, and I'm not sure if I love the ending in general at all, but I did really like the journey to get there, and I was really, really happy with that whole storyline. Kara's a great character. His wife is so realistic, and his kids just being like so like nonchalant about everything going on is just so like classic teenager, which I thought was really funny. I loved the nosy neighbors, and I love that this time Chizmar is more of a focus. In the first one, he really is kind of this like side character looking in, and it's really interesting this time to have him as the main character looking out. I thought that was a really nice juxtaposition, and I'm really excited to see that this is going to be a series because I would like to see Chizmar continue to write novels in this style. In fact, I would love it if he maybe almost became in the story without focusing on him. Like, it'd be really cool if he started writing about like fake true crime cases that are happening to other people and like kind of becoming a journalist reporting on that, similar to how he did the original Chasing the Boogeyman and not necessarily being always the center of attention. I think that would be a really interesting way to take this storyline as well. I know I am being so nitpicky with this, so this might come as a surprise, but this was a 5-star read for me. I really loved this. I didn't want to put it down. I had to know what was happening. It kept me very much on the edge of my seat. There were very few points that bored me. Some of his like interludes where he was just kind of talking about like himself and his family dynamic that had nothing to do with the case, I was just kind of like, no, okay, whatever. They were only ever a couple pages, and they kind of did end up adding to things in the end. So yeah, 5 stars. The reason I'm being so nitpicky with it is because this is kind of a low 5 stars to me, whereas Chasing the Boogeyman was just like an immediate 5 stars for me. Like, I didn't even have to think about it. I was just like, this book is amazing. Like, it took my breath away. But I think this definitely stands up as a very, very solid sequel, though not as good as the first. So definitely not a 4-star read. Definitely would recommend it. Definitely would recommend this series to everybody. Definitely felt very, very engrossed. And even though I feel like sometimes it like took me forever to read like 30 pages, like, I don't know, maybe I was just reading really slowly and digesting everything. Like, I was still so invested, and I never really wanted to put this book down. I also think the use of forensic evidence and the way that like the detective procedures work in these books are just phenomenal, and that's one of the things that I just love so much about books like this. And I do like that it reads like a novel, because I have tried so hard to read like real true crime books before, and it's so much easier for me to just listen to a podcast because it becomes really difficult for me to just kind of sort through everything, and having somebody kind of lay it all out in this novelized narration just makes it so much easier for me to digest, and it just kind of feels like an episode of Law and Order, but somehow grittier. And I loved it. I really loved it. I thought the crimes were really, really brutal. I thought that they were very well done. They felt believable to what they were. Like, they didn't feel super absurdist or over the top, and I liked how everything kind of did connect back to the origins of Chasing the Boogeyman, and we still kind of have our roots in Edgewood, Maryland, and I loved it. It was 5-star reads. Does not stand up to the original, but it's a really, really, really solid follow-up, and I'm excited to see more from Chizmar. I think this is a great format for him to write in. It's unique, it's fun, it's engaging, and I'm about it. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays, and if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah!